Hello everybody, welcome back, and thank you for joining me today for another Stitch With Me session. Getting close to the end of this diagonal now. Okay. Okay, so this one is pretty much by, it's a short one anyway, so I don't need to worry about carrying it anywhere. Works out nicely since I really only have enough to do one more stitch with this thread anyway. Guess I'll just do more of this same color since it's already highlighted. So yeah, I don't always work top down or whatever. It just depends on the colors. As long as it's doing leftmost cornermost before doing stuff that's down and to the right, so that I'm not closing things in. It's not quite as much confetti as there was before. Yeah, the confetti on this piece is unreal. But the finished product will be worth it. When I take it off the frame to take a picture of the whole thing, it's like, wow, I made that. Holy cow, how did I do that? I know it's 1x at a time, but when you see them all together, it's still pretty impressive. Oops. There we go. Oopsie. Try that again. There we go. I was splitting my fabric there. It wasn't coming up in the correct spot in the actual hole in the fabric. It was coming up sort of a millimeter away from it, and that's no good. Oh, goodness. Yeah, the colors are kind of flowing down towards the left, which is nice. When the colors sort of go opposite the natural diagonal, and I usually end up with more threads than I do when they're sort of going in that same direction that the diagonal is going. All right, so see, I'm waiting to do these four because the bottom one would close stuff in, so I'm waiting till I do everything to the left of it first. few scattered single stitches in this area. Of course, right after I said there wasn't much confetti, right? Made a liar of me. Those threads did not want to go back in the envelope. Yeah, so I use envelopes for my floss. I actually saw in one of the groups I'm in recently someone who used, instead of letter envelopes, they used CD envelopes, like the sleeves. I thought that was brilliant because they're actually, you can see through them, right? So you can actually see the colors. And they had the ones that were made to hold two discs. So they put the whole skin in the front and then the cut pieces in the back. I was thinking, gee, if I hadn't spent all that money setting up my own system with envelopes, I should have done that. So close to my system, but instead of letter envelopes, they were using CD sleeves. So that was pretty cool. Okay, so this one is not going to be a lot. We'll see if we can do all those stitches that I just highlighted or not. I think so. And I think, in fact, I can do those last two below this with the same thread, and then I'll join a new thread for the other stitches that are to the left and carry on, because, yeah, there's quite a few that go into the next section. So that will work out nicely. In fact, I may just do that right now. So yeah, again, not working in rows or whatever, just whatever makes sense to me at the time. The deciding what to do next kind of keeps my brain engaged. I know it definitely takes brain power, because when I'm tired, I can't really stitch. I have to do too much thinking. I will often, in fact, outline big blocks of the same section and then carry on from there, and then do those ones when I'm tired. So I don't really need to be counting or paying attention. It's just fill this whole area in like a paint by number section. All right, so I did these two and this one, and then I parked it down below the end of the diagonal. Okay, so again, let's take a look. See if this one here. Okay, so that's going to be enough to carry to the stitches to the left of them. So, and this one I think is just long enough to do the two stitches there where it's parked. Yeah, the length of my thread makes a fair amount of difference. Or, yeah, helps me decide what I'm going to do where. Pin stitch this. So I think I'm going to barely get the top of the fountain in this pass across my project. Get more of it at the next one. I estimate, I think I have 2 more passes across the entire width of the piece before I am done. Okay, so if I hadn't had more sort of stitches up over here to carry down, I would have maybe carried this one that I've got parked here up over to the right. But since I have others to carry down, I am instead going to take this one parked here and then carry it down below the end of this diagonal. I generally like to carry threads downwards if I can, rather than upwards, so that they sort of don't cause me problems. But sometimes they travel upwards. That's just how it works. Okay, again, how long is this piece here? This is a fairly long piece. Okay, and let's take a look at what I have in my tray. I think, yes, perfect. I have a shorter piece for that one on the bottom in the corner. That's what I save these little bits for. And done. All right, now back to this parked thread. Okay. That other thread was sort of going through this thread, but I managed to untangle them. Yeah, that occasionally happens. Ooh, look at that. The needle goes through the other threads. I only threaded one. Ah, you can see they're very uneven. That's why. Only one strand got threaded. That will not work. Okay. Okay. And put that there. Okay, I think. Trying to see how much of this color I have in this section. Pardon me, if it's worth bringing it out, the color out into my working tray. As my working tray only has, let's see. Yeah, it only has a limited, it has fewer spaces, about 20 something. It has fewer spaces than the number of colors in my project, which is like 89, I think. Somewhere around 90. So I have to rotate the colors in and out of my working tray. So yeah, often when I get to the end of a diagonal, I will sort of open up my my color list and sort of just tap through them and see whether the colors I have in my tray are used a lot in that section or not. If they need to be rotated out until I get to them again. Because obviously the colors that I'm using here for the sky are not the same colors I'm using for darker areas, say like the stone pillars. So, yeah. I rotate them through accordingly. Okay, this is just enough to do. Look at that. There's an end coming up through this spot. Let's see if I can find it. There we go. Yeah, from one of my pin stitches came up through the hole. So that's another reason why sometimes instead of pin stitching, I will go along the back, especially if it's like a bright pink color. You really don't want those fluffies coming up through. Especially like in an area where it's like white or something. You don't want a bright pink fluffy poking through. Kind of ruins the look. So there we go. And another color I can end. Good, I'm glad it's kind of short because it was too far to really carry anyway. Although it might be long enough. Okay, let's take a look. So yeah, normally I wouldn't carry this far, but as there are only sort of 2 stitches down there by themselves and would take a short piece, I think I actually will carry this one. And I'll use a tack stitch to keep it in place. So, let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 from the bottom. Yeah. Yeah, in this case, it wouldn't use up more thread. So just do it that way. So yeah, the length of the threads that I have parked or even in my working tray do influence what I decide to do with them. All right, find another short one. Should not be a problem. Yeah, there was a lot of this color, which means you inevitably end up with a lot of leftover bits. But they work perfectly for these little. So that's 1, 2, 3 from the grid line. So yeah, I made a tutorial a couple weeks ago about how I grid, and I mentioned in it that one of the reasons I do like doing my own gridding with the thread is that you can still see the grid line even after you've stitched over areas, unlike with pre-gridded fabric or where you've drawn it on the fabric. So it's nice to have that extra landmark to count from, to double check that you have placed your stitches correctly. And also with the pre-gridded fabric, the grid doesn't go between the stitches like it does with this thread. You have to decide whether it's the 1 on the box or the 10. And I know that I would mix myself up and cause myself a lot of aggravation. So it's a bit more work to stitch it on myself, but I prefer it, I find. I don't have to remember, was that supposed to be the 1 or the 10? For me, these are, you know, 0, and then that is 1. The stitch beside it is 1, and the stitch to the other side of it is 10. And I am less likely to make mistakes then. had one of my friends who said, hey, it actually looks pretty. It's so shiny and sparkly. This, because it's a metallic looking thread. But it's not like the gold metallics and stuff you might, it's very smooth. Slides through nicely. I had a few projects that I were called to be stitched with the metallic threads that are, they're kind of rough, and oh, I did not enjoy it. In fact, there's a couple that called for that. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, the Krennic braid, and I just changed those to I believe 3865 DMC, which is like the winter white, so it's kind of a little bit sparkly, glowy, not just the flat white. So adds that little bit of sparkle, but it is like, it is a standard floss, so it is easier to stitch with. Saves me the aggravation. Yeah, I did it once. I made myself a little wedding announcement, and it had, the names were stitched in gold, and I was using some creative English while I was making that, while I was stitching that part. And I said to myself, never again. Oh, that was like I mentioned before, I'm a knitter, and my son had a little stuffed animal from the Tupi and Binu show. It was a Binu, and it was about this big. And in the show, in one episode, he has orange pajamas, and my kid wanted me to make him orange pajamas. I don't sew very well. I can sew, you know, sort of a basic straight seam or a couple of darts in a shirt, but I can't sew a garment from scratch. So I had to knit it, and I had to find some skinny orange yarn, and I had to knit this tiny little set of pajamas for this little toy that could fit in the palm of my hand. Oh man, I said there was a lot of cursing that went into that project, but but my son loved it, so in the end it was worth it. Yeah, he's a teenager now, but he still has that little toy and those little pajamas somewhere. I think I'll keep him forever. So yeah, a lot of work went into those. Yeah, I tried to find some like doll clothes that might fit, but orange, nobody makes anything in orange. Seems. I know one of my friends online, her favorite color is orange, and it's hard to find clothing in that color. The yarn I used was a thicker yarn. I actually had to split it in half and use one of the plies to get it thin enough. Because yeah, nobody, in like a thin little sock yarn, nobody had orange. Or if they did, it was that striping yarn that's like, you know, they have a bunch of colors in the same color family, and it's supposed to make stripes as you knit the sock. And so I couldn't get just a plain orange. It was like orange and red and yellow. So that didn't work. And I made him a Hobbs stuffy as well. Because he absolutely loves Calvin and Hobbes comics, just like his parents. Yeah, and Calvin and Hobbes, they never made any official merchandise. So you can't, there's no such thing as an official Hobbes stuffed animal. I loved that comic. You could never be quite sure if Hobbes was a magic tiger who comes alive when the adults aren't around, or if it's just the way Calvin perceives him compared to everybody else. You would think he's just a stuffy, but then so there's things like, how did Calvin tie himself to the chair, right? Because Hobbes tied him to the chair. So if Hobbes isn't real and he's just a stuffed animal, how on earth did Calvin manage that? Oh. Yeah. This diagonal will be done soon. Excellent. And then you can probably see I got some more sort of bigger sections of color in this next diagonal, so that part will go a little faster. There we go. I was having trouble working it across the back there. Alrighty. So you can see my diagonal's looking a little ragged, more like a stair step, but I'll fill it out. As long as I'm not closing stuff in, I'm happy. Just being guided by the colors. My pardon. I seem to be yawning in these, don't I? I find when I'm talking to you, I yawn a lot more. I don't know. I get oxygen deprived a little, I guess. Okay, I'm not going to pin stitch this because that next section is all light yellow mostly. I don't want this darker green to show through. Okay. Didn't double tap fast enough there. I think this is a shorter piece, so yeah, it's gonna go, yeah. Let's take a look at what's parked here. That's a longer one, so I think actually I may use those two, yeah. So I'm gonna take this down to the left more, since I have two threads. So I'm gonna leave those other stitches that are sort of in the next diagonal for that other thread that is parked higher up in the next diagonal. Yeah, that just seems like it will be the most efficient use, what makes the most sense to me. Okay. Try that again. Yeah, short piece. But I think we can squeak one more stitch that's right here out of it. Yeah, and then we won't have to add a new thread. I'm just going to tack it here so that it won't pull loose. As the shorter pieces, I have a harder time keeping them controlled. Okay. Yeah, lots of different colors in this pattern. I did the one I did in my profile picture, the Make-A-Wish Northern Lights picture, was mostly colors in the blue and green family, but this one sort of goes all across the spectrum. Yes, there's quite a few things going on. There's sky, there's trees, there's fountain, there's grass, there's stone pillars. Oh, this was one where I had to really trust the pattern. In those stone pillars, there's a lot of purple, which you wouldn't think for stone, you know, gray stone pillars, but it's the shading. And I was a little nervous while I was working that, because that's sort of where the pattern started. And the upper left was with the stone pillar, and it's the shadowed side. So there was a lot of purple. But I've done patterns by this designer before, so I decided to trust them, and I'm glad I did, because yeah, once I got it done and you step back a bit, it looks perfect. The shading looks exactly right. And especially when you're up close to it, it can look a little strange, but then yeah, you step back and take the whole thing, and then it looks right. All right, and this, so these other stitches are in the next diagonal. So I'm going to park this. There we go. And then this stitch is kind of on the line, but as it's the very last one in this area, I'm going to do it now so that I can tie it off and have one less thread to deal with in the next diagonal. Not that all the threads hanging bother me, obviously, because I got a lot of them. Might as well, especially since it was still already threaded. There we go. Okay. So lots of this color in this next section. Oh dear. These threads kind of tangled themselves together in my working tray. Let's see if I can pull this free or if that will make it worse. Okay, so I'm going to set aside these short little ones. I don't need them right now. Yeah, there's a bit of a knot. Luckily, it's close to the end, so if I can't pick it free, it's not a lot of thread to cut to be discarded. I think we managed to loosen it successfully, though. A bit fiddly, isn't it? Aha! Gotcha! Rock star! Okay. There we are. Yes, so I think all this yellow is sort of part of the shade and possibly part of, no, I thought maybe it was part of the bridge, but I don't think so. Oh, I was going to do this one below it as well. Yes, there we go. And then go back and cross them. Just make sure these are all still snug. There we go. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna do, oh, I don't need 2 needles, just 1 is sufficient. All right, so I'm gonna do this one and park it, do the yellow one next to it so that I can do the next one, and then I'm gonna carry it on down to the left. Those other 2 I'm going to leave for that other part thread, as I mentioned before. this yellow is kind of on the line there, so I'm going to just park that for the next diagonal. Leave it then. Okay, so this one, and then I'm going to carry back on down to the left, sort of as far along the edge as it'll take me. And then I have another one that's parked lower to the left that is going to carry back up along that edge. Although I don't think it will go very far. I will probably need a new piece, if I am remembering correctly how long that other parked thread is. Yeah, you can see why I get tired, because I'm holding a lot of information in my brain at once. Sometimes what path I chose to do earlier with thread, and how long the threads are, that sort of thing. Okay. Okay, actually, I'm going to go back to this color and work with this parked thread here. Yes, so I can see how long it is as well. Yeah, I think it's not going to be a lot left. We shall see. Right. And then 3 more. So I did a tutorial of sort of how I end the diagonal when I run out of room. I guess you're getting to see a demonstration again in this stitch with me. Okay, parked again so that I can do this one. That one is a bit longer than I thought. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna go back to this color because, yeah, now I can do all 3 of those in one go. And then most likely tie off. We shall see. Yeah. It's a bit far to carry. So I'm going to pin stitch this, restart later. I'm trying to find my vertical thread. Yeah, I like to make vertical pin stitches. I've tried doing horizontal ones and I don't know why. I just find them more awkward, so I just do vertical ones. They go a little faster for me. And I know this isn't a race, but at the same time, I have so many patterns I want to do, and, you know, only a limited amount of time. So little things that help me sort of save a little time, might as well. Pattern Keeper certainly saved me a ton of time. I think it like doubled the amount of stitches I was able to do, since I'm not searching through the legend or manually searching for stitches or trying to find my highlighters. And also, when I was using highlighters, every time I went to use them, I would push my stand away because I was so paranoid about getting highlighter on my project. So it would, you know, that always added a few seconds after I finished some stitches. I have to push it away, find my highlighter, highlight the stitches, close the highlighter, then pull the frame back into position. So that saves time too. Oops. Again, that magnetized needle pulled another needle along with it. Okay. Yeah, a few more stitches. I will be done this diagonal. And I think we will wrap this session up for the day. Okay, and I can actually do this top one here, as it will not close anything in. And then I will park it so that I'm not closing in that check mark stitch next to it. I'll do that next. And then I will do one more of this, that yellow. Ah yes, this is an extremely short piece, but just long enough for one stitch, which is why I chose it. There we are. Try not to unthread that. Just need you to stay threaded a few seconds longer. There she goes. And then yeah, since this yellow is still threaded, I might as well just do that one last stitch. And then I'm going to park it below. Right there. All right. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time. All right. Bye.